Welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. Once again, I'm thrilled to have my good friend Bill Alderman with Alderman Company. Bill is one of the industry's most well-known and best sell-side investment bankers. He works only in A&D, and he's doing great. He put out a good newsletter the other day talking about the three things that are affecting mergers and acquisitions in the industry. And we're going to talk about it a little bit. So, Bill, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure, Greg. Great to see you, as always.
I loved your piece the other day. It was it was a 2-minute read, but it was the best 2-minute read I've had all year. And it talks about the three things that are affecting our industry. Inflation.
Yep.
Inflation being one of them. Let's start there. What are you seeing?
So, look, and today is the 5th of May, right? So, we're watching our screens, and the market at the moment is down about, 3.9% for the day. It's about 2:45 in the afternoon, right?
Yep.
And we're down in the teens so far year to date, right? Off the S&P 500, depending on how you look at it, 52-week high or since the high at the end of the year. So things are clearly not quite right today, right? People are worried about a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of pontification about where it's coming from and what it is. But clearly, inflation belongs at the very top of the list, right? And what you're referencing, Craig, is we put out a newsletter, a survey to clients the past couple of days, and we gathered, and we do this a fair amount, usually once a quarter. We go out and survey our marketplace. And we have a database of like 13,000 people we talk to. And every now and then we pick 100 or 200 people in a target niche and ask them to give us some information, survey information, sentiment, et cetera. And this time we went out and we asked people, what's bugging you? What's concerning you? And these are almost all the people we spoke to for this exact survey were owners of small A&D companies weighted towards defense in the defense industrial base and defined as small suppliers, which depending on where you are in the DIB, defense industrial base, means you have less than 1,500, 1,500 employees. So that's the audience that we spoke to. And we got back some compelling information. The number one risk that audience said they're worried about right now, number one, not even close. And the survey was 3 weeks ago now that we started the survey. Number one issue, inflation. Now, number two was labor shortage, but it depends on how you phrase the question. So if you ask, are you worried about labor inflation? Well, that could be a labor problem, right? If you ask about, are you worried about hiring workers and are you needing to pay more money to attract talent? Well, maybe that's an inflation issue, right? So inflation and labor shortage really are, at least in terms of our survey, they're right on top of each other. They're slightly different. One is can you find the human talent, but it's tied to money because the more money you pay, the more you can find human talent, right? So they are separate. And the number one issue was inflation. Right behind it was a labor shortage. Right. And people are worried. And anecdotally, and we can talk about the stats and the numbers about inflation and the trends and where we've been. But in terms of M&A activity is down right now. And we're asking ourselves and asking our clients, why is activity down? And it's only anecdotal because we didn't specifically ask in this survey. Because when we wrote the survey 3 weeks ago, things hadn't really softened down a little bit. Things are softening out right now on the volume, the activity, the people calling us saying, hey, we want to sell in 6 months. And anecdotally, not scientifically, but anecdotally, we think the reason is this. We think that the inflation issue is no longer now just a concern. We think it's actually causing trouble. We think earnings are eroding. We think there's some margin pressure. And we think that owners are looking back at January and February and March and April. January wasn't that rough. February was a little rough. We think that the numbers in March and April, we think there was true margin erosion at a meaningful level for some of these suppliers.
I believe it. I mean, it's hard. You get your long-term contracts. It's not like Honeywell, your big, it's not like your big OEMs are, it's almost a sucks to be you type of deal. We got our contracts. We want it for our price. I was up in Carolina, in Western Carolina, visiting a machine shop up there, a $30 million. They had pre-purchased, they do a lot of alloy machining. They had pre-purchased a year's worth of alloys because they were a year's worth of supplies.
Yep.
Because they're worried about just, can we get it?
No, it's smart, right?
Yeah.
They're locking in the price.
Yeah. But you think about, no, they took physical inventory. But you think about, hey, look, the cash outlay on that.
Huge.
Now it's huge.
But they insulate themselves from this inflation. I mean, we're running at 8.5% inflation right now.
Yep.
Okay. That's the stat that came out through March. This is U.S. Bureau of Labor stats. 8.5% in March, which in the scheme of the history of humanity is not crazy inflation. But the last time we as a nation had inflation that high was 1977.
Yep.
Or 19, I'm looking at my chart.
I remember that. Yeah, look, I remember those days. I remember those days when mortgage rates, when mortgage rates went up to 18%, you want to buy a house? Okay, yes, 18% mortgage.
I remember prime, right? When you borrowed money from a commercial bank, you were paying up to 18% for your money, right? Yeah, we're not there. I don't think we're going to get there. But the market, people that are running companies today, right? And you and I are older, right? We're not the young bucks that are in this market. If you're a 35-year-old, 40-year-old, 45-year-old executive running a business unit or a division or a company, you've never seen this before. I mean, you've read about it, but you're a senior executive, right? You're doing your best, you're running a business, and you're dealing with something that you have never seen before in your life.
Yep.
It's stressful.
And I see it from my end. I mean, I see people quitting companies because the only way they can get a pay raise is to quit and walk across the street. And they go, hey, look, we need machinists. Okay, we'll go pay you $5 more an hour. The current company's like, hey, look, this is our pay range. Okay, I quit. I'm going across the street for $5 more an hour. That's the machinist. That's what I'm hearing from the machinist side. On the executive side, it's crazy.
Well, that's
my on the executive side, I am seeing, you want me? I'm here. I'm employed. I had a guy turn down $500,000 job the other day. Yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. It's the devil I know. Right. Is the devil you are is the one I don't know. The devil I know is, is I'm the one I'm comfortable with. I'm going to stay right where I'm going to stay right where I am.
Translate that into M&A, right?
Yeah.
So you're a buyer doing due diligence, and there's a company that's doing really well. It's growing. It needs to hire some members for the C-suite. Okay, 1, 2, 3 senior execs, and it needs some lower rank level labor to grow. Right? What do you model? Do you model 3% wage increase? Do you model 5%? Do you model 25%? I mean, it's not just a question of what is in the model. What database do you go look at? There isn't a database, right? And the issue is, if you have an environmental spill, you call the environmental consultants and they give you a range, right? You can model that in. You have an insurance claim. There was a fire. You call the adjuster. Right? What's it going to cost to rebuild the back of our building that burned? You get an estimate. You can model the cash flows, right? We're dealing with literally an activity that most executives, most buyers and sellers, most of the people doing this activity have never seen this level of inflation before in their life. Mm-hmm. So they're sitting there with the computer models, and they're smart people, right? These are not dumb people. And they're saying to themselves, now what? They literally are saying to themselves, what do I put into my model? That's not a good way to get deals done.
Right. I hear you. And look, if you don't know where to start, you certainly don't know where to finish. I look at the airlines. I'm like, at $106 a barrel now. I mean, I bought a plane ticket to LA for next week. It was $1,500 coach.
Yeah, but you know what? If you buy it in 3 weeks, it's going to be more expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's how much of this? So how much of this inflation you've been around business a long time. We got Russia going on, so there's raw materials, titanium,
Yep.
oil. How much of this is supply chain China, which will eventually get, the sine wave will eventually start to work itself out.
Yeah.
And how much of this is we just put so much money into the economy that we borrowed, interest rates went down to like nothing. What was it?
Yep.
You borrow 30-year mortgages at 2.5%.
Yep.
How much of it's too much money chasing too few goods, or how much of it's supply chain, or
So
how much of it's
I'm not an economist, right? I mean, there are people that for a living study this stuff. And I don't have a PhD. And, people that are a lot smarter than me that do this all day long can answer better. I will tell you my personal view, which maybe is relatively informed. And that is that what the CARES Act did, and it was the Trump administration that gets credit for the CARES Act, and then it was also a Democratic Senate, or Democratic House rather, and it was the Senate, and it was the new Democratic administration. They all get credit and they all get blame for, to me, what happened, which is the worst biological pandemic event in all of our lifetime hit.
Mhm.
And they flooded the economy with cash. Flooded it. Okay. Now, we know what happens when you have an exogenous shock and you contract cash. You get the Great Depression. I mean, that's just known for a fact. Something awful happens, right? And you constrict cash, you will spend a decade bailing out of a depression.
Yep.
When bad things happen, our country has learned the lesson. You flood the economy with cash, right? It solves the short-term problem,
Right,
and doesn't make it worse. But it's like drinking too much booze. You are going to get a hangover.
absolutely.
Right? Okay,
Yep.
So here's your medicine, right? The economy should have shut down, and we should have gone into a global depression within weeks after COVID hit. That's what should have happened. Okay, and the human suffering would have been enormous, right? Bread lines in the middle of a pandemic. So instead, you flushed the economy with trillions, right, of cash, or I think it was trillions, right? You can't do that without it someday coming home to roost. I mean,
No, I agree.
You're going to devalue the dollar. You're going to cause inflation, and the dollar that you got for free is eventually going to become free again, because the $100 in your pocket that became $200 in your pocket again someday is going to be worth $100.
Yeah, no. I'm the same. I feel the same way. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are. Everybody's complaining about inflation. I'm like, I don't know what y'all are complaining about. You just got a boatload of free money put in your pocket. The government just handed you.
And guess what? People did not lose their jobs in the middle of a pandemic.
Exactly.
And you know what? I think what both administrations did, and they can play the political talking head nonsense game all they want. They both did good things for our country. They prevented mostly the poor, maybe a little bit of the middle class, from starving to death in the middle of a pandemic. That's literally what they did. The price to pay, our economy will be slower and more sluggish for a decade. We're not going to go into global depression, but the party we had in 2019 of a phenomenal economy, how could you have a global pandemic and not have the economy get hurt?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Here's the way I always look at these things. Here's the way I always look at it. And everybody's kind of going, the government this, the government that. I'm like, forget the government. The government is not that smart. The government is just not that smart. Every day you've got business leaders. Every day you've got really, really freaking smart people in industry who get a billion signals a day, a billion signals, price signals. They're getting buy signals from customers, they're getting sell signals from customers, they're getting orders, they're getting Walmart, and they know what to, they react on a daily, weekly, they got ERP systems, which are unbelievable.
By the minute.
By the minute. And I think about it, I go, look, if you're looking to the government to figure this out, man, those guys are totally reactionary. It's Walmart.
Look to Russia's economy is the size of the state of New York.
Right.
Why? Because a centralized economy is not going to perform very well.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, the free market works. Okay. I mean, it just does. We live in America. We're a capitalist society. We
Right.
believe that if you let people within reason have freedom, right?
Yep.
If they're nice to each other, if they have freedom, right? Let them do whatever they want to do within reason, and they will make great business decisions. If you leave it up to a bunch of politicians to run a global economy,
Yep.
it's destined to look like Russia when you're done.
Absolutely.
Okay? So I totally agree with you. But the issue for me is people are all upset about inflation. Well, would you have rather had a global depression during a pandemic? Or
Right.
would you rather have a pandemic be over? We're dealing with something like the flu, and now our economy is going to suffer for a few years, but there ain't going to be bread lines and there aren't going to be dead bodies in the streets. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, well, look, we saw that. Look, the Great Recession seems like yesterday. I mean, it was 14 years ago. It was like 14 years ago.
Right.
And it was actually, when you think about it, it was liquidity dried up. Nobody could get money.
Yep.
If you owned a business jet, the value of that business jet was like Bitcoin. What's the value of a G550? I don't know. It's only worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it. All right. Well, that's what I'll sell it for then, right?
Right.
And oh, by the way, you better have cash because Bank of America wasn't going to finance your G550.
Right.
But what that did was that led to the rise of a company called Global Jet Capital, Industrial Partners. And those guys said, "Hey, we'll start to do some asset-backed stuff.
Yep.
We'll model some stuff out." Well, it took rise to that industry, and so the stock market. So it's really interesting how this is going to play out. But so how you're all right. So you're on the sell side. You've got your sellers. And your sellers are saying, "Hey, maybe I'm going to hang on to this thing a little longer, or I'm ready to sell." What are your buyers saying? Those guys are the 10 years up over 3% now.
Yep.
What are your buyers saying?
So it is the market is still skewed and not balanced, right? As a broker, right? And we're just a glorified broker, right? I mean, you're a broker of human talent. We're a broker of companies, right? What we want for us to have a healthy book of business, we want there to be as many buyers as there are sellers, prices to be attractive to both buyers and sellers. So there's a lot of deal flow, right? If it skews in either direction, it's not good for us. So if prices are really low, prices are really high, too many buyers, too many sellers, that's not what we want. Equilibrium. Okay. Right now, and I'm on record as saying this, Greg, I thought the floodgates were going to open this year because commercial aviation is coming back, the TSA numbers, air traffic, airlines are flying airplanes that have been on the ground, maintenance is going to be needed. I thought commercial aviation MRO was going to spike. Okay. I thought defense was going to be good when the Ukrainian war broke out. Defense is going to be better than good. I mean, it was 800 million, then it was 2 billion. Now it's $38 billion of incremental spend on Ukraine. Okay. So there's a supply base. It's just got to go make $38 billion worth of hardware. Okay. So it should be a really good market. There are buyers. The issue is, and I don't know this for a fact, and the survey that we ran didn't ask this question, but we're going to do a survey again in about 2 months. And we're going to ask this question. Were you going to be a seller this year? And are you holding off because of inflation? I mean, that literally is the question. And I think the answer is going to be, for some sellers, yes.
Yeah. Really good article. I just saw something on the internet, and it's on the warzone.com, which is kind of a website. And I'm thinking of looking at Russia.
Yep.
And people don't, you think about Russia, they punked themselves. One, they showed the world their military is not very good.
Correct.
Two, they showed the world that anybody who bought its equipment got ripped off.
Yep.
Because it ain't very good either. And three, it showed that the only sellers in town of military equipment are the US and NATO countries. So, Black Hawk helicopters, Eastern Europe is now clamoring. They're calling Sikorsky now going, "Hey, can we buy some of those Black Hawks?"
Because and the Javelin, they can't make the Javelin fast enough.
Yeah. But you think about the things that now countries that you never thought would come to the West for
Yep.
stuff are now coming to the West for stuff. And then you think about like the drones,
Yep.
you know, this could be, I mean, for A&D, the floodgate, Russia could have just opened up the floodgates. I mean, inflation be a challenge.
Right.
There's some opportunity over here too. When you think about, fuel costs are high, more LEAP engines need to be built. This could be a
Yep.
boon for Airbus and Boeing and GE,
Yep.
which needs it. I mean,
Yep.
there's so much opportunity but the question becomes now, I'm looking more at the opportunity and going, oh, it's real. Maybe it's not as bad as, I look at.
There's only one reason why this market is not active, very active. Both commercial aviation and defense should be very active for M&A activity right now. The only reason I can think it's held back is inflation. But I don't have the raw numbers, right? We do these surveys. I'm only speaking, Craig, anecdotally, right?
Mhm.
Phone conversations and emails with clients. We're going to hit the market with a full-blown survey, and we'll be back to you. Okay, you'll be one of the first guys to get our results. We can do a podcast if you want, but I think my crystal ball is probably right. I think inflation is what's holding people back right now.
I think so too. Let's talk about, I want to ask one more thing. So interest rates are up. You've got private equity groups typically lever up pretty good.
Yep.
How does this affect the way, I mean, are they going to be willing to borrow money at 6-7% versus the 3 to 4 that they were to
Here's
buy
my
companies?
response.
Or are they just, or the multiple is just going to come down and make up for the?
See, I don't think it needs to change that much. Okay. Let's say that you were a buyer and you were using 2% money. Okay. Did you really think 2% money was going to last forever? I mean, no. Nobody thought 2% money was going to last forever. Right?
No.
I mean, look, my mortgage is down around 3%. God bless. Okay. But the reason it's 3% is because I knew it was not going to stay there for very long. Right.
Right.
Okay. But here's the thing. If rates go to 18%, it's going to have a huge impact, a negative impact, huge impact on M&A activity, because that's enough to really move the needle.
Yeah.
But as somebody really smart once told me years ago in my M&A career, whether it's tax rates or insurance rates or anything else, if something goes from 3% to 5% and your deal blows up, you shouldn't be doing the deal.
Right.
I mean, if it's that razor thin that you're borrowing today at 4% and in 2 years you're borrowing at 5.2% and now your deal blows up, you just did the wrong deal.
Yeah.
Right. So my response is, if rates go up a little bit, Craig, only the worst of the worst deals are going to have a problem. Okay. Because deals shouldn't be done that tight, right?
Right.
But if rates go to 18%, then, Katie bar the doors, right? Because it's going to be ugly while people are saying, I ain't doing no deals.
Yeah. It's really funny. I used to have a good friend. He lived up, you'd remember this guy. You remember the guy who used to get on TV? He says, when your bank says no.
Yes.
We say yes. Yes. Joe Goria. Joe was actually a good friend of mine. He passed away a couple of years ago. He's a good friend of mine.
Sorry.
And you listen to his story. I go, Joe, how'd you get into the banking mortgage business? He goes, oh, everybody thought I was nuts. He said, I started my mortgage company when rates were 18%. And everybody said, you're stupid. He goes, no, I knew it because they wouldn't stay at 18%.
How'd they go down?
I was going to refinance everybody down and make a little spread in the middle.
Yeah.
You just got to look at, I think everybody's got to look at the opportunity. All right. If it's a good time to buy now because rates are at 5%, they could go up. If they get up to, gajillion, if they get up to 18%.
If inflation goes to 13% for 2 years, it's going to be ugly, right?
Yeah, I agree.
If the prime rate goes to 12%, it's going to be ugly. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that couldn't happen. I think right now, and we should go look at the stock market and see where it's at the moment. We could be facing a full-blown correction here, right? The market could be down 20% from high to low today or tomorrow or the next day, right? It really could. That's sort of the environment we're in. Do I think the market's going to correct and go further down? I mean, it went down 40% during the Great Recession, right? I don't think that's where we're going, right?
I don't think so.
And could inflation go to 14% and stay there? Sure, it could, right? And I think there's enough concern that people are saying, wait, where's this going, right? that there's enough concern about, we don't know where it's going. I'm optimistic that in the next 30, 60, 90 days, it's not going to resolve, but it will plateau. And there'll be confidence amongst business executives that, hey, it's not going to 13%, right? Prime's not going to 12%. We're going to get through this.
I'm a little bit in this camp. You know, oil is $106 a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to stay about 100 to 106 bucks a barrel. You're not going to see 200. World supply chain is going to figure itself out. Russia's doing a little jig. They're saying we're making a crap, or not Russia, but Saudi Arabia is making a crap load of money at 100 bucks a barrel. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see demand fall off. Marginal cost equals marginal revenue.
Yep.
We're at 100 bucks a barrel. Everybody can plan for 100 bucks a barrel. So
Right.
we've probably seen the worst of that. I think we're probably seeing, you know, once the supply chain shock out of China plays itself out, we see where that is by the end of the summer.
Yep.
Everybody can start to plan for it. You know, it's interesting though. I saw your survey and I thought it was really interesting. So what is the big concern now? Are businesses going to start to reshore from what you're seeing?
They are. They are. It's happening, right? And there was an article I read yesterday that buffer stock, domestically made buffer stock, is going to permanently add cost to the system. Okay, we were too tied to a long supply chain of JIT. It was optimized, and without disruption, it worked really nicely. But I think we've all learned, especially for critical goods, medical supplies, defense hardware, chips, okay, that JIT long supply chains are dangerous. And so there needs to be buffer stock. And I think it's going into the system. It means onshoring. It means reshoring. It means less JIT. It doesn't mean laziness, but it means, you know what? It doesn't have to hit the dock at 4 to go to the assembly line at 5 to be effective. Right. We could have 3 days of buffer stock in the warehouse and we'd be just fine, right?
Yep.
Zero buffer stock is gone on critical supplies, right? On PPE, it's probably 90 to 120 days of national demand, right? But leave that as it may. I think the answer to your question is reshoring and onshoring. Yeah, especially in critical industries like defense, we're seeing it. It's here.
And the private equity, you think private equity is looking to more, your buyers are looking to more closely, you know, you're an A&D guy. So a lot of this stuff is ITAR, you know, it's ITAR restricted anyway. So it's, you know, it's a lot of it's in the US, but you know, are they looking more and more and more to that? Like if it's, you know, what's
more valuable? It's more valuable. A domestic supplier to the Defense Department that was maybe marginally attractive to private equity 2 years ago, it's no longer marginally attractive. It's attractive.
It's attractive. Interesting times coming.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some volatility. There's some difficulty in the next few months ahead. There's no doubt in my mind, but I'm an optimist. I think the fundamentals are excellent. I think domestic manufacturing is going to be stronger in the next 10 years than it was in the past 10 years by far. And I think that the commercial aviation is recovering. The global pandemic is becoming endemic. I think Boeing, Airbus, GE, the supply chains are going to be stronger, healthier, good demand. Defense, we got to build our defense. We got to build the defense industrial base. This little, and it's not that little, but this little issue of inflation, we will get it behind us soon. And then I think we've got a really good run for 5 to 10 years.
I agree with you. I think this inflation thing, I think it's a speed bump, and the opportunities on the other side of it will be monumental. I think the just the reshoring of manufacturing alone could add, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs to the United States at good wages. Yes, it drives costs up, but you know, the economy, everybody says, hey, look, you know, globalization hurt the American worker.
It did hurt the country. It hurt the country.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. You know, real wages in the Midwest fell.
Nope.
And now
it hurt the country.
And now all of a sudden, look, and now all of a sudden now we're going to say, all right, we're going to pay a little bit more, but we will have good, healthy wages, good, healthy communities with good jobs behind us. So
And good supply chains, and we're not going to rely on our enemies to feed ourselves or
Yeah.
protect ourselves or defend ourselves, right? Or take care of ourselves.
It's going to be a fun time. I think we got a fun ride ahead. How do people get a hold of you, Bill?
Phone number, I'll give you that, and an email address. It's
All right, I'll put it in the
put 'em
notes.
up.
Give it to me now. Give it to
all
everybody
right,
now.
phone number, my personal mobile number, 914-414-4070. Email address, my initials, WA, Whiskey Alpha, at aldermanco.com.
Bill, thanks for coming on. It was great. Always love talking to you.
Craig, you're the man. We'll do this again soon.
Very soon. Thank you.
All the best, Craig.
I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at northstaresg.com, or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Piven.